All right, hello everyone, and welcome to our very first segment of our very first virtual field trip to the Green Hairstreak corridor. My name's Sarah Gomes, and I'm going to be your main tour guide for today and your main speaker for this next segment. So, in this segment, we're going to talk about some of the natural history of the corridor, and we're going to use some really awesome historical photos and historical maps so that you can really see for yourself just how this landscape has changed over time. And I think that it really helps us understand how this story of the green hairstreak butterfly was shaped by this urbanization of the Sunset District. So this first map that I'm going to share with you today is a really awesome map created by Nature in the City. And really what we're looking at here are two different maps of San Francisco at two different time periods. So pre-development and post-development. And on your left here, we have a map of San Francisco before 1750. And on your right, we have a map of San Francisco in the 1990s, which was when this map was created. So for today's purposes, we're just going to focus on this left-hand map, but I really wanted to share both maps so that you can see just how much of San Francisco has been developed in the past few hundred years. So today we're going to focus on this left-hand map, which as I said is 1750 and before. And the colors that you see here represent different habitat types or different land cover types. And what we're going to focus on is the yellow. So this yellow that you see here spread out all over San Francisco represents coastal sand dune habitat. And the light green represents grassland habitat, and the speckled darker green represents coastal shrubland. So the green hairstreak butterflies like this coastal sand dune habitat, which you see a lot of here on the left-hand side of San Francisco. Now this borders the Pacific Ocean, which you see to your left, and to the right of it is really what we refer to now as the Sunset District, and this is where our restored habitats are now. So this next set of pictures that I'm going to share with you are of this area in the Sunset District in the next few hundred years. So these first two images that I have for you here were courtesy of the San Francisco Public Library and the San Francisco History Center. And they're two images from the same angle, side by side, from 1865 on your left and 1890. So here we're looking from the Pacific Ocean back at the Sunset District. And in this left-hand photo here, you can see that really most of this area was covered in sand dunes, just like that other picture showed us. There's really not a lot going on at this time in terms of development. Around the same time, we also have several records of other lepidopterists or butterfly scientists that record the green hairstreak in great numbers. They report them as very abundant and happy in this habitat. And this timing also sort of coincides with the gold rush, which had a huge role in shaping the development of San Francisco. So we know that gold was discovered in December of 1848, and at this time San Francisco had around 400 people for its population. And in just a couple months, in response to the discovery of gold, people flocked from all over the world to settle in San Francisco. And this population of 400 shot quickly to 2,000, to 5,000, and by the next year, it had shot to 40,000 people. And so while this development was really centered at the flip side of San Francisco along the San Francisco Bay, by the 1890s, which you see in this next picture here, this development has spread to the other side of San Francisco in the Sunset District. So, as you can see, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of buildings built along this great highway, and this is when we start to see lots of changes from urbanization. And the next two photos that I'm going to share are both taken in 1910 in the Sunset District. And I show this to help us understand that there are still a lot of sand dunes in the Sunset District at this time. Of course, we start to see more development, but most of the Sunset District looked like this in 1910, and it's in the next 3 or 4 decades that we really see this area start to become more dense and more urbanized. And so with that being said, the next 4 photos that I'm going to show you were all taken from the same angle, roughly 10 years apart. And this first image that you see here was taken in 1928. So to give you some kind of geographical reference, we're looking out towards the Pacific Ocean from a hillside up in the Sunset District. And as you can see here, more houses are being built. There's still a good amount of sand dunes. And this next photo was taken in 1936. And you see a few more houses being built, but still some remnant habitat. And this next photo was taken in 1947. And this is when you really start to see less and less sand dunes in the Sunset District. This last photo was taken in 1958. Now, in terms of butterflies, this is around the time that the butterflies were started to become reported as extinct, or rather extirpated, which means locally extinct. Some of the other butterflies that had also shared the same habitat, such as the Xerces blue, had also gone extinct by this point. And so this is when we really start to see a decline. After this, there aren't many lepidopterists recording what the butterflies are doing, or at least not the green hairstreak. And there are some records of a few green hairstreak in small numbers in places nearby, as well as in the Presidio and in other places along the Pacific coast, but really they're not around in great numbers. So this next set of photos that I'm going to share with you are some of our restored habitats now, before, during, and after they were developed. So this right here is 15th and Quintara. This was taken in 1926, before it was really ever developed. And you can see that there's a ton of butterfly habitat here. Right now, this is our most successful restored habitat site, and this is what it looked like before it was ever developed. 2 years later, in this photo, in 1928, the Quintara steps were constructed, and you can see just how much of the habitat was lost in just this tiny project. And really, this is what's happening all over the Sunset District, and it becomes really obvious here just how hard it is for the butterfly to survive when this is happening all over the place. And this last photo is what the Quintara steps look like today. This middle section and the top sides are now restored butterfly habitat, and we'll go into this a bit later when we actually dive into the corridor. This next picture is of Grandview Park in 1928, while the park is being built and some of the houses along the side. And these next 2 pictures are of Grandview Park today. Again, some more of its restored habitat. This picture was also taken in 1928 when this area was developed. And this is at 14th and Mount, which now we refer to as Rocky Outcrop, which is based off that big rocky outcrop that you see behind this man's car. So these next 2 photos that you see here are of the bottom of Rocky Outcrop as well as the top, which is actually where the butterflies were sort of rediscovered by a local lepidopterist named Liam O'Brien. And this last photo is just another habitat back in the day. This is called 12th and Pacheco. You can see the stairs here and the street below. And this next picture is what this habitat looks like today. So we're going to end this segment with Nature in the City's most recent map, which you can see pictured here, to kind of refresh your memory on what the city looks like today. And my hope is that by looking at all these really awesome historical photos and historical maps, you can kind of look at this project with a different lens and have a better understanding of how this area has changed over time and all the work that's been done since to allow these butterflies to keep on thriving in this really dense urban environment. And this map is really awesome. There's tons of information here. So if you're interested, you can check out more at natureinthecity.org. You can preview the map to look at it, or you can also order one from yourself as well. So I hope you all enjoyed this first segment. We've got a lot of great stuff coming, and without further ado, we're going to transition to our next segment called the Green Hairstreak Corridor, where you're going to hear from Amber about what the project is and how it's evolved over the years.